Today, I would like to talk about FOMO, and I brought Bront over to help me talk about it. Hello everybody, I'm Roadblock, and this is a Raid Shadow Legends video, and I am very excited today because we have Bront Cat Herder on the channel today. We are going to discuss FOMO, something that has been very prevalent recently in Raid, and this was Bront's idea. Thank you for the idea. Really appreciate it, and I appreciate you coming and joining us on the channel. But overall, how are you doing, man?
Pretty good. It's certainly been a while since we've had a chance to collab, and we're definitely in a different state of employment than I think the last time we were doing this as well. So it's definitely a lot of stuff going on, but good to see that you're flourishing, and I've certainly been flourishing as well, and the Raid community has been awesome. But this is certainly one of the more pressing issues that Raid has, and it's certainly worth talking about. And honestly, I thought you were a perfect content creator to talk about it, specifically because I have heard you talk about your dark urges before, pulling shards occasionally, as well as I have heard you a couple times on some videos of like, hey guys, I just need to make content, so I'm pulling shards, but you really shouldn't. And if that is not FOMO embodied, I don't know what is, which is, and to be fair, you know what? We do stuff for content that you probably shouldn't do. I'm sure I've done some stuff for content before too, but I thought that that was actually a good talking point for talking about this stuff a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I am very guilty of falling into FOMO traps. I think my first example is going to be one that was a while back. One of the first big FOMO kind of events, which we're going all the way back to the Monster Hunter event. I'm not sure if you remember that. Well, I'm sure you do. But it feels like forever ago. And they did a good job back then of kind of giving you a guaranteed way to get most of them. But I don't think they gave a guaranteed way for Nergigante Archer here. And that FOMO, man, it got me hard. I gotta make sure my door is closed. I spent a lot of money on Prism Shards when they were brand new. Get Archer Queen, as I like to call her. And the punishing thing almost is that when I got her, I ended up getting a second one from Sacred Shards as well. So it was kind of a waste. But what were your thoughts on that particular event? Listen up. I just got a new promo link that you can use to follow along with me on my latest free-to-play adventure and get a free Elenaril as well as 3 more powerful epics as you level up. Here's how to do it. Log out of Plarium Play and uninstall. Click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Go to your inbox and claim your first champ. Don't miss out on your chance to get Elenaril right after signing up, as well as Fayne, Uugo, and Tagoar as you progress through Raid. Click on my link right now and let's crush this together.
Yeah, that was one of the ones where I was a little frustrated that they didn't let all the champions be gotten. But at the same time, I've now understood why they're doing it a little bit more, because they do want one of them to be the quote-unquote premium one. I do appreciate that as they have moved forward, it's often been whoever ends up being the boss of the event dungeon is also the premium elite one that is never guaranteed, but there are ways to get them. And to be fair, there technically was a guarantee, because I think there was a win this tournament, get this champion was that. And it was only, I think, 50, but I can't remember if it was a shard summoning one or if that was a champion training. I know they've done that for some of the other champions as well. And in fact, I know Curiosa, the Demon Lord one from the Chaos Awakes, was never guaranteed under any circumstances, but she's a mythical, so that kind of fit as well. And at least in that one, for the rewards that they gave you for getting all of the champions, they did not include her in those rewards being a mythical, so you didn't have to pull a mythical to get the extra rewards for pulling all the other champions. Mm-hmm. Now, Odin, I did go for with Prism Shards, and I got him. And to be fair, I got really lucky. I think I got 4 legendaries in 20 prisms, and including like a dupe Necmothar, which was fairly useful for me, and a couple of other champions that were good for the account. And so I've always had a very fond idea of the Prism Shards, which I've since learned is probably not the wisest thing, because they're not as good as I thought they were. But at least we now have the mercy for them, and that's, I think, really what kind of prevented prevented me from spending on the Archer Queen at the time is there was no Mercy for them back when you pulled for her. And the Mercy in Prism Shards is still not great, but it exists, which is certainly better than, not existing like it was for a long, long time.
Yeah. No, I know there was no Mercy because you can see all these Theodores and my +3 Calvalax and my second Calvalax. Those were all extra champions I pulled while going for, in Prism Shards, going for the Archer Queen. I just kept hitting legendaries. Like I said, I thought the rates were really good, and then it wasn't her. And it was brutal. Yeah. It was really
I was
brutal.
going for it from the perspective of I wasn't even guaranteed a legendary, and I could pull 30 of these things and not get a legendary.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore. Now, to be fair, you can still, I think 30 is where you get that legendary now, which is, so it's not saying it's that much better, but at least there's something, and it makes it feel a little bit better. But yeah, that was definitely one of the champions I will say I might regret not getting, but I don't regret not spending on it because I knew where I was financially at the time. I just couldn't afford to spend it, and it wasn't a reasonable amount of money given what I was going to spend for me, and I made a wise decision to not spend on that. The Odin one, for example, was a little frustrating because I made a decision to spend on it and was going to do a video on it saying, hey, why not? I do shard pull videos all the time. And then I accidentally hit the pull 10 button. And so I was like, I already pulled half of these things. Let's not make the video anymore, and pulled the other 10 and they're copped Odin. So I was like, okay, very anticlimactic from that perspective, but that's more of a regrets in general than a regret on a spending. Yeah. But yeah, it is definitely one of the things that they do. And they, in many ways, they did it with Leo teasing, and to be fair, we wouldn't have been teased the guaranteed event if we hadn't had that one leak. And I think that was probably, honestly, one of the saving graces from the long time it took us for Leonardo to show up as a guaranteed event. If we had not known he was a guaranteed event, a lot of people would have probably missed him because they wouldn't have been saving up for him thinking he's a guaranteed event. We now really have a template for these events because we had the same thing with Alice. We had the same thing with the Chaos Awakes, where we know there's going to be a deck of fate for one of the champions, probably out of souls. There's going to be a shard path for one of the champions. There's going to be a fusion for one of the champions. And there will probably be multiple prism shards, and one of the champions will only be available in those prism shards or raid up events. And that's fine. That doesn't bother me too much. We had an extra one. We had the Titan event for the Turtles event. The Titan event was basically because they had 6 champions as opposed to 4 or 5 like they had previously. So, and again, the Titan event, definitely a long-term thing for April, but was a another thing of fear of missing out on some of these champions. And I think people basically said, which are the most powerful ones? And I'm going to worry about missing out on those and not worry about missing out on the other ones.
Yeah. I like the way that they did the Turtles event. I skipped on April, as you can see here. She's grayed out. I said, I don't think that she's quite worth the investment for me personally, but I did get all of the Turtles. I did not get a Shredder either, but I wasn't trying for a Shredder. So I was really pleased with the direction that they went with this recent one. It felt like there was less FOMO in the sense that I'm gonna miss the ones that I want. The FOMO came more from making sure I didn't miss Leonardo. I would wish that they could be a little more transparent up front. They were very transparent with the Monster Hunter collab when they said, hey, these champions will be available on these events, and they said where you can get these champions. I would like that I understand why they don't do it, because then I'm gonna save everything until Leonardo, and they don't necessarily want that. They want you to be out of shards, and then the Leonardo event hits, and it's like, oh crap, I have to buy some shards, right? So I understand why they don't do that, but that transparency helps a lot in managing my resources and making sure that I can capitalize when that time comes. And it definitely helps to not feel like you're missing out on the current content too. Because you can say, oh, I still have 2 weeks. I can recoup a couple shards. Let me pull for this small event here and get this little prize and not punish myself. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think them letting you know about some of the stuff in advance, I think, is better overall. And I think what it does is it allows for some of the fear of missing out part to say, I'm going to hold off because I don't know how expensive this event is going to be. That makes some sense. But it also gives a certainty to, I know I'm saving up for something. And the stress that a lot of people experienced with the Leonardo event was, I don't know if I'm actually saving up for an event that's going to actually happen. And I can't tell you how many people were like, one of the big rumors out there was Void Shards was going to be a guaranteed void only event for Leonardo. I saw that repeatedly from people that swear they had good sources on it, and it turns out they never did. In fact, one of the guys that reposted it on like 5 of my videos, I said, do you have any proof of this? He says, oh yeah, it turns out it wasn't true. It's like, okay, but you just spread the word on this like 5 or 6 times. You're not helping with this either. But that type of panic, that type of anger that was entirely unfounded for the most part was there. And the other thing that I've got some, I don't know if you got a backlash for this or not. I got some backlash for calling it a reasonable event. And the reason I said it was a reasonable event is because they'd run multiple other events for similar value for Leonardo. And it was literally at the, okay, well, if he's a void, they're going to raise the price of him by X, and X makes sense. And that's what they did. So for me, it felt like they had basically said, this is the value that we're charging for this champion, and he was at the value I was expecting of. Was it high? Yeah, probably you could argue it was very, very high, but that doesn't mean that they, didn't set the expectations ahead of time. And we, in theory, have had 3 months, 4 months to save up for him in some way, shape, or form. The real trick was, am I going to miss out on these other fusions? Sanguine Maria, very good champion. Granite Doorkeep, very good champion. And I like both of them. I found I've been using Granite all over the place on my free-to-play, and he's got a spot on my main as well in a couple of places. And yeah, I love the champion. And then Sanguine Maria has been very effective in the areas I've been using her on both accounts as well. So she's actually been a useful addition to the roster, even if she's not like a primary top-end PvP champion that she could have been. But I don't think the nerf to her either necessarily changed much with that either. I think that just kind of locked her out of a little more PvE content than she could be used in, where she would be very good, but not more powerful than some of the other champions that already exist anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And even these fusions as well that you just mentioned, great champions. And I'm glad that we were able to, as you can see, I also was able to go for them and still get the turtles. But it's important to remind everybody that you don't always need every champion well. And that's one of the important ways to kind of battle that FOMO a little bit, to kind of remind yourself, like, you know what? And that I'm kind of doing that as well. That's why I did that with April and Shredder. It's like, I have the champions that I use right now. I don't know that they're going to quite make the cut, but I'll take the fun ones that hold a special place in my heart. What other areas of the game do you think have a bit of FOMO that maybe we haven't?
I think one of the biggest FOMO points in Raid is Primal Shards, actually. Primal Shards, you've got a ton of them right now, and it really is one of these things where I pulled some Primal Shards for Leonardo because I decided that the guaranteed Leonardo, or the guaranteed soul in the case of the soul, was worth more than a possible 0.5% extra chance to get a mythical on a 2x. Plus, I'm still building up Mercy, so eventually I will get that champion anyway. And that was my take on it. It doesn't mean I want to eat primals constantly, but again, I'm viewing my shards as a tool to get a good guaranteed result. And so I've taken the gambling out of going for a mythical by going instead for a 5-star soul for a legendary champion that is well worth that 5-star soul.
Yeah.
Who's going to be as good as possibly a mythical without a soul. In many cases, he's really good. Maybe not quite as good as a mythical, but he's the guaranteed, this is something I get in my account, versus the, oh, look, you could be getting something absolutely amazing. And that's where I think, people talk about how the rates in Raid are bad on these shards. And I think the problem is not just that the rates are not great, but that it's also difficult to get some of these shards.
Yeah.
So Primal Shards are difficult to, get without spending money, because the only real way to farm them is Live Arena, which a lot of people don't like to do for fairness. I enjoy Live Arena, so I tend to do it. I tend to max or nearly max out however many primals I can get on both of my accounts in Live Arena. So I tend to have a few of those things, but still, they are rare. Mythicals are rare, and they're viewed as the ultimate prize in this game. But I think if you are living your life in I absolutely cannot pull these outside of a 2x event, you're then basically saying that the chance of a mythical is better for you. The fear of missing out on a mythical is better than getting the guaranteed event or guaranteed whatever that you could be getting from those shards. And I think that's where the FOMO really, really plays into hand.
That's a great point, because I'm a prime example of that. I skipped out on Leonardo's 5-star soul and saved my primal shards. Primal shards would have guaranteed me. I had enough to get the 5-star soul, but I chose to wait. Now, I will say one of the reasons I chose to wait is because I have a Shadowkin defender defense champion with a 6-star soul. So I was like, well, I think I can make that argument. Obviously not void, but I talked myself out of it because I had that FOMO of missing out on a potential mythical. And I could pull, I've already hit, so I could pull all 53 of these. My mercy is not close. So I could pull all 53 of these and not get a mythical and probably regret my decision of not getting that 5-star soul. So that's a great point. And I never would have considered that when it comes to the FOMO side of things. You can look at it from a lot of different angles for sure. Do you think there's ever any content that people maybe push themselves a little too hard or burn themselves out on because they have that FOMO that they won't be able to get it done?
Yeah, actually, we were talking about prism shards for a while. The prism events that happen regularly for the soul stuff, for the gear ascension equipment, that is one. In fact, I know that reared its head in the free-to-play regularly, where there were people that basically chose to not do a fusion because they wanted to do the Sand Devil event for the chance to get a single prism shard. And I know you laugh because you may have ended up being one of those folks, but you're not the only one that chose to do that. And I looked at it and said, this isn't worth the energy because I don't have good enough gear to get any real value from the ascensions. I would be better off farming just better gear from dungeons or champion training to level up the champions I actually have, because then those champions will be better as well, rather than hoping I'm going to get a banger of a champion from a single sacred shard effectively, even if it is a curated, list of champions you're going to get it from. Now, I think endgame counts can probably do those tournaments pretty reliably without really endangering much of anything. But on my free-to-play, for example, I usually like to do those events when I can because it's still a big or the medium-sized soulstone, which are still another rare resource. And I just said, look, I need to train champions. And then when the fusion came out that looked like something that's going to help that free-to-play, I'm like, okay, I need to shift slightly and decide I'm going to save all my energy in general. I'm also not farming stage 25. I technically now can, but it takes me like 14 minutes, which is not very effective. And yeah, so, if I can farm stage 25 Phantom Shogun, then that's easy for me to do because that one I can do no problem. Sand Devil is a little more problematic on my account at the moment. And, if I'm not farming stage 25, I'm not getting effectiveness out of farming those things. So I'm already compromising on that. Why should I also then compromise on the rest of the account and miss out on a champion, even if, getting Farrakhan the Fat, who's like, one of my most wanted epics on my free-to-play, was an option because he was one of the, 20 epics in there. So it was a 1 in 20 chance of getting Farrakhan the Fat as far as I was concerned. That was what I was looking forward with that shard, and I just said, no, I just can't do it.
Yeah, and it's definitely a different perspective when you're an endgame account and a spender even than that free-to-play approach, because it's very easy for me to pencil in these tournaments for Sand Devil and Phantom Shogun because I have consistent team in both fast, so I know that I can pump that out really quickly, get some good rewards. Even if it's just an immortal soulstone, I'll still go for this. It's not a prism, but it's still, those immortals really add up quickly if you're doing all those events, and then that can help you complete those soul deck of fates and different events around souls. So I love going for those, but yeah, sometimes you do have to make that decision in the moment. And I completely agree with you that a fusion is the better choice than a single prism shard, regardless of who the chance is to get in the mix. So yeah, you definitely have to make those calls. For me, my call is just pulling out the credit card. So but I get where you're coming from.
But that's not a choice on your free-to-play too. So
no. And on my well, I haven't played the free-to-play in about 6 months, I think, maybe longer. So I haven't been tested with that FOMO, but it'll be interesting to see when the next fusion. I'm hopeful to do the Crystal Fusion or whatever next one will be on the free to play. I've gotten my shard count back up, so we'll see if I get. I'll be sure to shout you out in that video when I give in to the FOMO and make a sacrifice. But is there anything else that you feel like we haven't touched on, or do you feel like we've kind of covered everything?
No, I think that covers most of the stuff. I think one of the final ones, I actually did a video on stop playing Weight Shadow Legends where I talked about this one too. But one of the things on my free to play I've generally been doing is I've not been stockpiling the Mortal Soul Stones. It's something I recommend later game accounts doing. So there's definitely a swing point of where it makes sense to start stockpiling these things. But on a early game account where you are constantly getting new and impactful champion, even a 1-star soul is a huge upgrade from a 0-star soul. So for me, at least, I mean, to be fair, I waited until CVC when I yeeted a bunch of them last time, and I'll probably, for the most part, just wait till CVC and yeet them. And if for some reason there's another event that pops up outside of a CVC where it makes more sense, then I'll probably swell them there instead. So I'm not constantly just yeeting them. But like for some of the Marius missions, literally if I don't eat some of those souls, I won't be able to do the Marius missions because I can't then sell enough to get the right cards I need to get to, or I can't then upgrade champions to certain levels. And then there's just champions that are just so good, but they need at least a 1-star soul to be amazing in the content I'm looking for them. Like Godseeker, for example, I needed at least a 1-star soul to make that a lot more reliable. It worked without her having any soul, but it was very, very sketchy. And then finally getting a chance to get that soul for her gave me another 7,500 HP and the ability to repair her broken max HP a little bit better. And those two things combined, I guess it's only 5,500 for her, but that still was an extra 10% extra HP on what the build was running with. So that's huge. And it was worth yeeting a couple shards until I either had the resources to buy the next level from her, if it came from the shop, or to just pull one of her and be done with it. And, eventually I think I ended up buying one from the shop, but I wouldn't have had the resources to do it if I'd been saving up all of those other resources. I also pulled a 5-star Raphael soul on my main. I don't remember if it was on my main, on my free play. One of them, I've got a 5-star Raphael soul. I think that may have been on my main, and I literally just decided to yeet 10 shards at a CVC, and boom, there was a 5-star Raphael soul. So, it doesn't always pay off, and yes, there is always the fear of missing out on the 2x5 and 2x6x, but even then, the chances are not so huge that it's like a deal breaker, and you really need to kind of look and see at your account, what's going to make the most sense for your account? Is the reward that you're going to get right now worth sitting and waiting for and not doing something else later? And or what are the chances of getting something better going to outweigh your ability to, get something good now?
Yeah.
And it's always going to be a personal choice. Some people love the gamble, and that's fine. But I think that, if you let the FOMO rule your life, it's probably going to ruin your raid, expectations overall.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note too that even in regards to the Mortal Soul Stones, when you get those soul events, they're usually not worth a whole lot. I mean, it really, realistically, I've pulled 40 of these 2 cards as it's hyperbole. I'm not, that's not an exact science. It probably was more like 4 cards, but yeah, the point value for them doesn't quite add up. So I see where you're coming from. As you can see, I'm more of a Weight Shadow Legends kind of guy, but you made a very, very good point at the end there, which is, and I always try to emphasize this on my channel, is play how you want, Like what we're talking about right now are all recommendations and our experiences. You could learn from them and adjust your play accordingly. But at the end of the day, there are some people that just say, I don't want to do X. Like right now, I don't want to do hard faction wars, so I just don't do it. So, it's a choice. You get to enjoy the game how you want to. And, but keep in mind that FOMO can definitely creep its little head in there and make you make decisions that maybe you didn't to. Because I definitely didn't want to spend that kind of money for Archer Queen to pull things full circle here. But I convinced myself that it was okay. So I think we'll wrap it up here. I just want to say thank you again, Bront, for being on the channel. And guys, if you haven't already, go check out his channel. I'll put a link in the description for you to to check it out. Do you have any other last words?
No, I think that again covers a lot of it. Again, this is a game. I always talk about having fun playing Raid Shadow Legends, and that's ultimately the best thing is you should be having fun, and ideally you should not be mortgaging your house to play Raid Shadow Legends either. And so hopefully, thinking about the fear of missing out stuff, there is no single champion that is going to ruin your raid experience if you don't get. It may not be as cool because you won't have somebody that's this awesome, but it's very rare you get a guaranteed champion. That's where the fusions come in. That's where the occasional guaranteed event comes in. Those are okay times to maybe think about the FOMO, because at least then there is a clear, I spend this, I get this, compared to, say Archer Queen, which is I can spend money until the cows come home and I may not even get the Archer Queen. I might have 27 Theodores, but I'm certainly not going to have an Archer Queen. That was a possibility. That could happen. And that's, not the right type of, I guess it's not a good way to be playing Raid if you can avoid it. It's going to be heartbreaking, and it's going to really drain lots of resources and not just ones in the game.
No, I agree. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. It is the best way to support my channel. And while you're at it, go ahead and head on over to Bront's channel and click that subscribe button too if you haven't already. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing all of you in the next video. Take care.
Bye.